Welcome to the Beast Games Quarantine. This is intended to be something of an appendix to the mainline Mr. Beast video, and so would recommend you watch that video before watching this. If you don't, it might feel a bit like you're walking into a room midway through a rant, but also this is probably pretty entertaining on its own, and the context is not that hard to grasp. The original plan for the mainline video was to keep discussion of Beast Games itself to an absolute minimum, but as the project developed, we found ourselves in need of more examples of Team Beast's creative instincts. And Beast Games was a petri dish for Team Beast's worst creative instincts. So we quickly found ourselves overwhelmed with examples and minor grievances that we just need to exorcise. Exorcise, that's like The Exorcist. We need a priest. There's really no better way to attack this than in linear order, so let's start with literally the first thing we see. This opening CG shot is another example of a post hoc editing decision.
Did you already know that the beginning was going to be that VFX shot, or did you have that idea afterwards?
So this whole mic coming down, me grabbing it, this was definitely a thing we did afterwards.
You could make the argument that reality TV ought to be shot with soft eyes, open to spontaneity, but does that argument really play for the very first shot of the show? If any moment can be scripted and shot with intention, it's this. But as we drilled into you during the video, Team Beast is making this up as they go along. We covered this in the main video, but the opening strong challenge was conceived and shot entirely for spectacle. But spectacle was seemingly the only thing given any real thought. And to be fair, it is visually interesting. In the various behind-the-scenes bits, Jimmy is clearly proud of the concept and the spectacle of this thing. But it was just too hard. The sandbag that they needed to carry back up the rope was 1/3 of the contestant's body weight, which sounds like it evens the odds, but that's not how mass works. All the dancers, swimmers, and cyclists finished really fast because they all have a really high lift to body mass ratio, while everyone else struggled. It's basically the rocket equation. Building muscle makes you stronger, but stronger muscles are heavier, which creates diminishing returns when those muscles need to lift themselves. A 105-pound ballerina needs to lift a 31.5-pound sandbag for a total lift of 136.5 pounds. A 240-pound bodybuilder needs to lift a 72-pound sandbag for a total lift of 312 pounds.
41 and through. Wow, we're not going to get there.
Who would have thought that despite having 100 of these giant mammoth people, that over half of them didn't even complete it?
So yeah, the majority of the strongs actually fell off and the remaining slots were filled with a tiebreaker round of push-ups.
Do you worry that this may not be the most interesting content? Like, this isn't the most visual after going from that to this.
This will never make the show.
The narrative presented in the show ends up being highly misrepresentative of the reality of the game, and as you'll see, the further we go into Season 2, the more this stuff will crop up. It really needs to be stressed that this is a massive undertaking. This strong challenge is probably the one game that really delivers on the promise of Beast Games as unparalleled spectacle, but that only makes the abject failure of the game all the more embarrassing. This goes back to the lack of intent and the seeming lack of actual testing. I think the flaw in this game is apparent from the whiteboard. These numbers alone communicate the issue. But even if we accept that the laws of gravity are too nuanced for Chandler and the boys to comprehend, surely any good faith testing would have involved a jacked dude having a hard time. There's just no version of this where Beast Games comes out looking good, because either they tested it properly and understood the dynamics at play and still chose to go ahead with it, or they didn't test it and made this enormous investment based on vibes. For whatever it's worth, the show's director, Tyler Conklin, is adamant that they did in fact do loads of testing, and it was literally just a skill issue on the contestants' part. Sure thing, brother. As a bridge subject here between the Strong and Smart challenge, we're met with a recurring gripe that will haunt the show until the very end: block stacking puzzles. It's so vestigial that it's not even worth mentioning most of the time, but the Strong challenge had a block stacking puzzle as the capstone task before contestants could push the button. I guess the boys figured that the competition would be such a nail-biter that they needed one last task to slow contestants down long enough for the cameras to react, but, you know.
Everybody in push-up positions.
That brings us to Oops All Block Stacking, the Smart challenge. As discussed in the main video, the SMART challenge involved playing Simon with colored blocks replicating Jimmy's pattern. In order to properly talk about the SMART challenge, we need to distinguish between the game as presented in the show and the reality of the production. First, the fiction of the show. The game was easy and overhyped to an insulting degree. Literal rocket scientists enrolled in a game show framing itself as a test of intelligence, only to be greeted with a literal children's game. But that ended up being irrelevant because there wasn't even an attempt to stop players from just copying off each other. It wasn't much more than a test of procedure and of mass hysteria. The narrative, as it is shown to us in the show, is incoherent. We're shown 3 rounds of Simon. Round 1 involves 6 blocks with a 60-second timer, with failure leading to elimination. In round 2, it's 10 blocks in 30 seconds, but only 22 make it through. No eliminations. Round 3 involves 16 blocks, no time limit, and with the first 28 to complete the puzzle successfully making it through to the city. This is all shown to us in a delirious 5-minute sequence, so you can be forgiven for just letting it all wash over you even as I describe it. In reality, they started with 4-block stacks, which eliminated no one, and incrementally ratcheted up the difficulty until they landed on the final format.
We'll be doing this over and over again, adding more and more blocks until 50 of you are eliminated.
In reality, they were making these people stack blocks all night.
Look outside, like it is like 6 a.m.
They were tuning the difficulty of their game as they were filming it.
And then Jimmy was like, this is too easy. I don't know why we did it. That eliminated more people than we needed. Like, it was a disaster.
This moment as a whole is also a great example of something that will plague the entire show. So much so that we won't even bother to call attention to it most of the time. But there is so much Jimmy voiceover that has been added to make it look like this was all according to plan. Like round 1 eliminating 0 players was an intended outcome.
As I expected from a room full of geniuses, you all got that pattern correct.
Like so much of Beast Games, this foreshadowed a persistent issue. The creators have no idea how to produce a game show for smart people.
I don't have a degree in memory.
The premise of the season is strong versus smart. It's nerds versus jocks. Fine. The problem is that what it means to be smart is incredibly elastic.
100 of the smartest people on the entire planet.
Are we talking about academics? If so, what field? Surely we want some NASA folk. How much emphasis are we putting on personality? Is it enough to just be a stereotypical nerd of medium intellect? Whatever definition we might come up with, Jimmy walks straight past it. We have the usual suspects of smart people, but we also have contestants labeled as Rubik's Cube savant, street smart, media mogul, AI prodigy, top 1% board gamer, Guinness World Record gamer, stay-at-home dad, sweepstakes champion, billion-dollar problem solver, young investor, top 1% national public speaker, high school grad at 17 while raising children. I mean, very commendable. That's not smartest person in the world territory. We should note that players had these labels imposed on them. Jack didn't scribble child genius into his application form. Some dork at Team Beast gave him that title. Essentially, anyone can be smuggled onto the smart team with the right framing. Sue Smee, a finalist from a recent season of Survivor, is a smart contestant. In fact, this season as a whole is marked by a notable uptick in professional reality TV personalities. So, what is a smart challenge for this cohort? No, seriously, that isn't a trick question. Answer in the comments. What are we supposed to do? Are we making them sit the Harvard entrance exam? Maybe an egg drop? This is a really difficult problem at a baseline, and Beast Games simply has no idea how to solve it. Beast Games Season 2 does not have a credited game designer. It's pretty much an open secret that Jimmy and the boys come up with the games, and they don't seem to be particularly big into QI or Jeopardy! Beast Games conceives of smart people from the perspectives of a group of guys who never went to college and think high school is obsolete, trying to pander to an audience of 9-year-olds. I mean, for God's sake, when introducing Beast City, the Strongs get a functional and well-rounded gym, while the Smarts get a child's chemistry playset and a shelf full of the cheap public domain books real estate agents use to dress show homes. If there was an answer to this smart challenge conundrum, these guys were not going to be the ones to solve it. Across the entire show, there are extremely few instances of pure smart-coded games, and they are universally memorization games for children. It's stacking blocks and memorizing a path through a grid. And, like, the strong contestants aren't Sims. They don't have an ability score allotment. They're adult humans with adult human intelligence and experiences. They can both get yoked and solve block puzzles. And since that is the ceiling on smart challenges, smart people have no actual function in this game.
There's a lot of strategy in it. I'm excited to see the smart people maybe like grab the strong and kind of point them in a direction. Hey, listen, you can go super fast, but if you fall, our whole game's over. So slow and steady might win the race.
There is enormous asymmetry that advantages strong contestants. A strong contestant can survive and win a smart challenge, but if a smart wants a shot at the private island, they will need to win Get a Grip. Predictably, this filters out and neutralizes pretty much all smart contestants. There's a perception that strong people have that competitive dog in them that the smart people simply don't, but what that means in practice is simply that certain strong people have a willingness to be rude that the smart people don't know how to deal with. From the very first game until the last remaining smart, we're going to see what amounts to outright schoolyard bullying of them by strong contestants. Smarts are systematically eliminated with almost scientific efficiency. There's something almost McLuhanist in the way that Jimmy has made a children's game show nominally for adults, and immediately the adults start acting like children.
So far, not a single smart person has been picked yet.
Jim's new nickname is Backpack Boy because his girlfriend is carrying him through the finish line.
Those few smarts who do go on a deep run ultimately make it through because they're non-threatening, just lingering at the margins, a free space that one of the real contenders can cash in at the right time. Which they absolutely do. There is an almost ritualistic moment where seemingly everyone agrees that the two token smarts have outlived their value and now get thrown into the volcano. It's so intense and immediate that both of them start crying. Beast Game Season 2 is ultimately tailored for a very specific kind of archetype, and by the end of the show we have 3 identical dudes slapping each other on the back for making it here, so you can look forward to that. So I'm 5 pages into the script and we're only 20 minutes into episode 1. That's a great sign. The contestants arrive at Beast City, and I'm sorry, but this place sucks. The scale of the space is big enough that everything needs to be cheap to fit the budget, but it's small enough that there isn't much of note for people to do, especially people who aren't gym rats. Also, the production does basically nothing to maintain kayfabe and frequently include wide shots that show the bare dirt construction site that surrounds the build. The show tries not to draw attention to it, but contestants are sleeping in what are essentially barracks with zero privacy. The pitch being that, don't worry, we'll filter it down pretty quickly, and so you'll get a barracks to yourself soon. The city is built for 100 people, but by episode 3 we're already down to the top 25, so the city feels empty almost immediately. That trope plays well in Survivor when it gets to the last few contestants. It's a meaningful absence the show can explicitly draw attention to, but that doesn't work here. There are only 2 episodes where the scale even remotely matches the actual population. I'm loath to give suggestions here, but here's one for free. If you want to keep your big stupid spectacle 10,000 contestant opening, then do what American Idol does and end episode 1 with 20 people left who get to go and do the actual game show. Moving on, in the scope of things, this gripe is perhaps more forgivable, but the edit has a big problem of overemphasizing contestants who end up going deep into the show. Overwhelmingly, these players are top 10 to 15. This gives the show a weird energy because Beast Games has an army's worth of contestants, but you keep seeing the same dozen or so faces over and over again. On the first viewing, this was noticeable, but on rewatch, it's unbearable. It's not a subtle leaning towards contestants in the top 10, it's the Nick, Jack, and Monica show, with other contestants sprinkled in for plausible deniability. During episode 1, while blitzing through the entire setup of the show, the edit takes 50 full precious seconds to give Jack the child genius a full introduction, doing what can only be described as gesture maxing to pander to a group of strong contestants.
I mean, listen, the right to bear arms is right here.
It's not interesting, but Jack is making it to the top 6, so you'll be seeing a lot of him. So he gets an introduction. He's the closest thing we have to a smart protagonist, clearly because he went all in on embedding himself into the strong clique. Jim and Monica also get a 70-second introduction during episode 1. As already mentioned in the other video, they both go on a deep run and end up getting married during production. I don't know, fake married. It wasn't legally binding, but who cares? Many reality shows have a protagonist couple, and these two are essentially that. Even in the behind-the-scenes stuff, they're given a lot of emphasis. Considering how much time will be spent focusing on these people in the back half of the show, the amount of time they get in the front half is simply outrageous. This is Team Beast overcorrecting in response to Season 1 criticisms. It was said that they didn't spend enough time with contestants or build character, so they're ramming these people down our throats until we choke. But the effect of all this is that the majority of the contestants feel like NPCs in these people's game. Again, all of this would be fixed by simply making these people the ones who actually do the show. You clearly have your protagonists. Your top 20, just chuck everyone else. You don't need them. They can go sooner. Episode 1 ends with 6 minutes of setup for the next game, which we'll call OG Bribe. 10 players from Season 1 were selected to have a chance to compete in Season 2, so this game involves them bribing contestants to swap places with them for $100,000. This premise is sort of take it or leave it. There's arguments for and against bringing back notable contestants from Season 1, but whatever those arguments may be, this isn't one of them.
You can't just snap your fingers and make 100 million people or however many people end up watching Season 2 instantly care about people. So the best way to do it without rushing it and give it time to breathe was just to bring back the people they already knew from Season 1.
Our whole idea for bringing back the 10 contestants from Season 1 was from the criticisms, which is kind of funny. Like, they said that we couldn't tell stories, we couldn't build characters. And what better way to do it in Season 2 than bring back the people that we've already fully built?
They thought they were cheating the system. They thought they were sticking it to the haters by bringing back these fully formed individuals. The fact that this even crossed their minds once again highlights that they can't build character. The fact they think reheated leftovers are a viable substitute just proves that they really aren't cut out for storytelling. I'm sorry. Anyway, Episode 1 cliffhangs on a contestant stepping forward to take the bribe. It's not an effective cliffhanger. We don't know who this guy is, nor do we care, but it does parse as a cliffhanger. Like, it's a dramatic beat that carries momentum, even if you feel nothing. So, whatever. The episode has to end, so we may as well end here. But does it need to end here? Because the only reason this moment is available as an endpoint is due to the odd pacing of the episode overall. The episode is 43 minutes long, 38 minutes once you lop off the teaser and credits. Despite being the launching pad for the season, it's the shortest episode in the whole thing. In that brief 38-minute runtime, we introduce the show and its premise, introduce the first 200 contestants, set up and complete the Strong Challenge, set up and complete the Smart Challenge, introduce and screw around in Beast City, and set up the OG Bribe Challenge to serve as a cliffhanger. 38 minutes. To say it runs at a breakneck pace is an understatement. The natural endpoint would have been the arrival at Beast City, possibly with some preamble about the city itself to build some hype, leading into the teaser of what is to come. But there simply isn't 40 to 60 minutes of content in the first two challenges, even before they had to be gutted in the edit. And of course, we've got to have that cliffhanger ending, so we get the setup of the OG Bribe on this side of the episode, and that effectively pads it to just long enough to call it a full episode. Already we're seeing weird structural decisions. Episode 1 is just as much of a parade of segments as Episode 7. You're just inclined to forgive it on the first watch. Okay, so Episode 2. We spend 7 minutes resolving OG Bribe. All the Season 1 contestants make it in. Cool. Then we get the premise of this episode. Players can choose one of 4 games to participate in, where each game will eliminate half its contestants. This will be a problem. All the games try to leverage this massive video floor that I'm told was accidentally a world record.
I mean, we weren't going for a Guinness World Record, but we got one.
Dodgeball is the only game that really requires the screen as designed, and really it only serves to complicate matters and introduce problems, but it is a core part of the game. It's Dodgeball, where teams are dynamically split based on these lines on the floor. This is meant to produce even groups and break up cliques, but in this, the first real game we see, players immediately disobey the rules of the game as designed. The best way to survive is to be on the side with the most people, so rather than spreading out evenly, like this pretty graphic suggests, people would hoard into the one slice, and it becomes a question of who the stragglers will be. and in cases where a popular person was stuck, people would just throw their ball away. So, who are we eliminating? The answer may not surprise you.
I'm falling back towards you, okay? Okay. Because there's smarts in front of us. Yes, I know. Exactly what we need to do.
You say we're going for smarts, right?
Yeah.
Yep, I got you. I heard you.
So, yeah, we get Patrick with predator eyes staring down smarts like it's middle school gym. That's all there really is to say about this game. It's dodgeball. The next game was Balance, which I'd argue is the best game of the show, and director Tyler agrees with me. Contestants are split into pairs and have to vibe check the weight of this heart and stack rocks on the other side of a scale. The goal is to avoid placing the rock that tilts the scale and breaks the heart. Because it's reasonably well balanced and works fine, there's not a ton to say about it. The next game was Bluff, which was a complete disaster. We covered it in the main video, so we won't dwell on it here. It was a game premised on contestants lying to each other with no incentive to lie. No one lied, and contestants were eliminated by drawing names from a box. If this worked in playtesting, it was playtested wrong. Everyone who signed off on this should lose their job. Finally, we have the Blocks game, which I'll call Big Blocks to distinguish it from the previous block game. Seemingly, because the first block game was so easy, people gravitated towards Big Blocks as their choice of game. 40 of the 100 contestants chose Big Blocks, which kinda broke the whole game. Big Blocks involves stacking a bunch of large foam blocks to reach a flag. Each team has a designated guy on top of the pile stacking them up, and they're limited to one runner at a time who retrieves the blocks from a pile. So there are 18 people on each team without a specific role to fill. They try and form a committee of engineers to help plan the build, but it's a stack of blocks. It doesn't require a civil engineer to figure it out. In fact, that ends up being another dagger in the heart of the SMART campaign. The producers used the fastest completion of the Strong and Smart games from episode 1 to ordain the strongest and smartest players as team captains, and they draft the players into their teams, again like middle school PE. So Corey, the Navy veteran, drafts all the biggest blokes he can see, while Johnny, the pro Pokemon player, spends his precious first-round draft pick on Dino for experience. The teams drafted ended up being split almost entirely along the Strong and Smart divide. Johnny's team is composed of 15 smart people, 4 OGs from Season 1, and 1 strong contestant, a bare-knuckle fighter. And as it turns out, running and lifting giant foam blocks is physically intensive, and given that the game didn't just take all night, but ran almost until noon, it was unbelievably physically intensive.
Yo, it's gonna get hard getting those up, by the way. There you go, buddy, dig deep.
So while Corey's team was able to rotate between Giga Chads to lift these blocks, Johnny's team had Gage from Season 1, who eventually subbed out for Johnny himself. While it took all night to play out, the Smart team was never going to win this. I don't know how to say this politely, but this ended up being an enormous brain drain for the whole show. 15 of the 50 Smart contestants, over a third of the total pool of Smarts, were eliminated from this one game. And Johnny picked he picked all the actual smart people. The MIT researcher, the PhD candidate, the civil engineer, the NASA data scientist. Johnny picked them all for this suicide mission, and so the smart people who survived this challenge were the ones just filling up the numbers on Corey's team. Going forward, most of the smart people you'll see will be people like Luke, the crypto content creator, Sophie, the licensed attorney, and Katie, the reptile breeder. Anyway, the show drags this out over 11 minutes and ends on the cliffhanger of Jimmy egging Johnny on to attempt a 9-foot Hail Mary of a jump. A basketball hoop is 10 feet off the ground. Johnny is being asked to make an NBA caliber leap while standing on 40 feet worth of precarious foam blocks. But anyway, spoilers for Beast Game Season 2, but Johnny misses the jump, and the strong team wins because Mitch is so close he just needs to work up the grit to stand up. They milk that for an additional 3.5 minutes. 7 more minutes of milling around Beast City, and we get the obstacle course. This is perhaps the most overhyped thing on the show. They say it's the craziest obstacle course we've ever seen, but gun to my head, I could not tell you what separates it from any other obstacle course on Wipeout or Ninja Warrior. Like, Ninja Warrior is tuned for top-tier athletes who are expected to do monkey bars with a single bar, while this was literally beta tested by Jimmy's rando buddy in their backyard for a main channel MrBeast video. The only thing of note that stands out is this Y shape at the end of the course. It brings the contestants together and raises the possibility of some honest-to-God violence going down. That would at least be a unique spin on a classic formula and really fit the whole Beast Games vibe, but no, it turns out they didn't even notice this element until they'd already built the damn course.
Because we have a Y, and then we have a path that both of you share, and he stood on the path. And we're like, oh, there's like interaction there.
I was surprised I wasn't rammed off the platform there.
If somebody's standing there and $5 million is at stake, I'm going through you. We can't have that. Somebody's gonna get hurt.
So, no blood sport. There was a whole set of rules against violence that the audience is never told about.
You'll see the right arm of White.
Here it is.
Grabs the side, now goes for the head.
Oh, that's where it gets illegal.
That's the illegal move.
And he's out at this point.
No matter what.
It's not that I'm pro blood sport, but it's just, they really built this thing before noticing the players could hypothetically crash into each other, and now we're going frame by frame through this footage as if Mike, who speaks 4 languages, has been flagged for holding. Players are each split into teams of 5 and go against each other, but each round has a different theme, sort of. They keep changing the rules, but nothing materially changes because for 3 of the 5 races, anyone failing to complete the course eliminates their whole team, which happens very quickly in all 3 of those rounds. It's another bizarre decision that leads to a huge portion of players not getting a chance to participate. The obstacle course involved 50 contestants, and by our count, 28 players didn't get the chance to participate at all, and 16 of those players were eliminated. This is seemingly another byproduct of bad production. The details are a bit fuzzy, but as we understand it, production gave themselves 1 night to film the obstacle course, Captain Bribe, and the cannonball find before everyone would need to fly out for the Survivor collab. Then you had the big block game run over and into the morning of that same day, so 4 games would need to be shot on that day to stay on schedule. A huge thunderstorm rolled in that night, and they gave themselves no other option than to brute force through it.
We had such a tight turnaround. Basically, we're under the impression if we didn't film all of the games, which seemed impossible at the time, we weren't going to be able to go to the Survivor Island and film that entire episode. We couldn't miss that. We were stuck.
We've just been sitting here on lockdown for the past 3 hours.
The bigger thing is the next steps of what we're gonna do to salvage the episode. Just be on standby. We are gonna get this thing done. So thank you guys. Thanks for sticking it out.
We're just gonna try to get as many run-throughs of contestants going through this obstacle course as possible before we have to shelter in place.
So we would speculate that the decision to be so cutthroat was part of their attempt to salvage the episode, ruthlessly cutting production time when the opportunity presented itself, even if it meant almost a full third of contestants were eliminated from a game without being given the opportunity to participate. On top of that, a wet course is a significant increase in difficulty, so a bunch of contestants get to sit there and be eliminated as their single runner slips off the wet rubber within seconds of leaving the platform. Anyway, let's move on to Captain Bribe. The same teams from the obstacle course are kept together for this game. A player is nominated to serve as captain, and they're bribed. It's all there in the name. This is a recycled game from Season 1. The captains are offered an increasing amount of money that they can take at the cost of eliminating their team. And this feels incredibly fast, right? Like, there has been 1 cooperative challenge so far, the obstacle course, which we already pointed out was not really a cooperative challenge since a majority of people didn't run it. Only 1 team really had a clutch moment that suggested there was any cohesion or camaraderie between them. So the challenge sort of plays it both ways. In some cases, the obstacle course teams reflect pre-existing alliances, and so there is implied off-camera rapport between them, but at the same time, some people were forced onto certain teams, and so there's distrust of other members. And they work both of those angles, but it's just not compelling. The bribe caps out at $1 million. As we said in the video, the calculus is obvious here. You take the money. As a top 25 contestant, you have a 4% chance of winning the $5 million, and you're being offered a 100% chance at 20% of the prize pool. You would be a fool to turn down those odds, and so the only justification to turn down the bribe is if you value your integrity that much in a game show all about debasing yourself for money. So yeah, we get another rug pull cliffhanger with the show pretending Nick took the money when he hover-handed the button. But plot twist, he was too slow and JT took the money. It's better than season 1. Episode 4 then opens with 4 full agonizing minutes trying to put the screws to JT. Jimmy hands him a microphone to explain himself. JT says he has nothing to say, hands the mic back to Jimmy, who promptly hands it back to JT again and presses him to address his team. And it's just, it's not good television. It's uncomfortable and awkward because JT just won $1 million and is being made to feign guilt for the camera. He is, in fact, happy to be a millionaire.
I think that when I leave here, I could live with myself knowing that I got that $1 million.
And then we get the most insane line in the show.
Greed is idolatry.
Imagine saying that on your second appearance on Beast Games. With that cliffhanger resolved, we can move on to the main hook of the episode, which is a crossover episode with Survivor. For whatever reason, the Survivor segment only includes 10 of the 20 remaining contestants. So to punch their ticket to Survivor Island, contestants need to find cannonballs hidden around the city. It's the only instance of them actually using the city as a play space, and I'm surprised they didn't do it more. Probably because it would involve reusing an asset.
And in traditional TV, they'll run like 20 seasons on one set.
Not us. That would be boring. Who wants to watch the same thing over and over again? Not me.
Because the production crew had to film 3 challenges in one night, there's a noticeable lack of coverage in this segment. Just to pick one moment that stood out on rewatch, we see Katie find a cannonball in this wide shot. It then cuts to a close-up of her holding the cannonball in PPE from elsewhere at the cannons. It then cuts back to the sand pit and we see Katie still there digging, all in a 5-second span. But anyway, I find the pyrotechnics bit very irritating because it's just a pointless waste of money. It reeks of insecurity. This is the sort of thing you do for the contestants and yourself, not to make good TV. Anyway, Jack is the only smart person who doesn't find a cannonball, and so he cries ugly tears to camera while the winners who aren't idiot nerds hop in a stretch Hummer to go win a private island. The Survivor crossover is fine, and not like a limp fine. It's actually fine. It's B-tier Survivor, which makes it S-tier Beast Games. But for our purposes, that makes it very boring to talk about. The Survivor team did everything and Team Beast just had to turn up, which, as we saw, they barely managed that.
We partnered with one of the largest shows ever programmed on television in order to create the most insane television crossover the world has ever seen. Beast Games and Survivor fused into one single groundbreaking episode.
The precise way that Jimmy hard sells his content has become really irritating to me. It's the way he talks as if he's trying to get you to invest in the show itself. It's not enough for you to want to watch it. You have to believe in the content's value and believe in Jimmy's value for making it. This is the kind of language you use when talking to investors. The Survivor segment lasts about 45 minutes and features one team game, followed by Get a Grip, and finally Tribal Council. No one is eliminated in the segment, but the winner gets a private island valued at $1.8 million, which they're allowed to cash out. The Tribal Council segment takes about half the episode, which isn't great because Ian and JC are both very unlikable people, and watching them both grovel and plead for votes to win the island sucks. Because the Survivor episode is entirely self-contained, it wreaks havoc on the overall pacing of the season and skews the screen time towards a select few people. Ian wins the island, but we're shown in a post-credits bit that he cashes out because, yeah, a normal person does not need a private island. Like, it's actively a liability to own. As a consolation prize, JT wins the coin, a MacGuffin that gives the holder an opportunity to flip the coin and potentially double the prize pool if they make it to the top 6. It's meant to act as a hostage that protects the holder as they move through the show. But again, the game theory is weird because for some reason, the person who flips the coin risks elimination if they call it wrong. So if you make it to the top 6, you have a 17-ish% chance to win $5 million, and the coin represents an 8-ish% chance at $10 million instead. The absolute odds balance out, but the relative odds do not. $5 million is life-changing money. $10 million is life-changing money plus X. Flipping the coin strictly benefits the opposition. Either you flip the coin and double the prize pool, or you fail and get eliminated, increasing their odds of winning to a clean 20%. So in that sense, the coin is a cursed idol that grants protection early on, but requires a blood sacrifice down the road. Maybe that's interesting, but this little subplot cost Jimmy $5 million in Season 1, so he spends all of Season 2 trying to bribe the holder to sell it to him, which they eventually do. Really, Season 1 played out more or less the ideal way that this device could. The holder gets a bye through several rounds because of it, and then calls it doubling the pot. But in a hypothetical 20 seasons of Beast Games universe, I suspect this is how it would go. Hold the coin with no intention to flip it, and cash it out in the late game. It would then lose its mystique and the protection that comes with it. Moving on to episode 5, the gang returns from the island just in time for a full 10 minutes yapping over the outcome of the island. Most of the chatter is based on the false premise that the island has permanently shaken up alliances.
Island people are gonna stick for island people.
That ends up going nowhere, because the island was an adversarial exercise. They were competing against each other. In that same soundbite, JC says he feels isolated because people voted against him. That is the real tone of the aftermath. People are either lukewarm on the whole thing or harboring new petty grievances. Jimmy eventually gathers everyone together under the pretext of offering JC 50 grand for the coin. JC predictably rejects that, and so we move on to Cubes, Beast Game's most notorious challenge. Cubes is the only Beast Game challenge that really breaks away from the strict children's game theme. This game was featured in Season 1 of Beast Games and was popular enough that Jimmy has reused it elsewhere, most recently on Kevin Hart and other mid-tier celebrities with bad agents. The decision to run it back with Cubes is so hack that one team assumed there must be a twist to it and started destroying the room looking for clues.
I hate to break it to you, there is no twist.
Cubes involves 2 or 3 individuals entering a room and one individual needing to elect to self-eliminate from the game so the others can leave and continue in the game. Players are given freedom to use whatever method they want to determine who should be eliminated, and each room has a phone that calls out to Chandler & Co. to order explicitly whatever they want to reach a verdict. The whole pitch of the challenge is that the show goes hands off and lets the contestants figure it out on their own terms. The problem emerges when this concept comes into contact with Jimmy's love of deception and dishonesty. Beast Games is not just unconcerned with players reneging on their agreements, Jimmy actively encourages it.
Yeah. You've given them your word, but you don't technically have to.
In Season 1, there were 80 different cubes running, and so several rooms devolved into these antics.
Yeah, I'm out.
Are we fair?
Yep.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Actually, no, I lied. Hey, bam, we're all gone.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm deadass.
The most notable instance of this featured the Habibi brothers. A pair of brothers were paired with a woman. One of the brothers simply refused to participate in any game, and so the 3 spend several hours sitting in an empty room with the brothers badgering her to agree to let that brother sit out their game, increasing her odds of being eliminated in any game of chance. She eventually capitulates to the game, loses, and is left to sit alone in the room chained to the wall. It's this scene that gives the game its reputation for being torturous, and that is why, here in Season 2, Katie immediately starts crying and reaching out for other women the moment the cubes are revealed. Most people go on game shows because they're fun. If this is how your contestants react to the dramatic reveal of your signature game, it might be worth interrogating why that is. The incident with the Habibi brothers is another example of a major failure in Beast Games, one that shouldn't have even made it to air. But the creators are explicitly quite proud of the game they've built, and so the Habibi footage is shown to us like 3 times in Season 2. The good news is that the Cubes game in Season 2 is a lot less dramatic. Rather than 242 players needing to pair up, Season 2 only needs to deal with the top 20, so basically everyone knows each other and mostly has their clique. The gimmick with the phones is that their stated purpose is to bring contestants things like a deck of cards or Jenga or whatever to elect a sacrifice, but the boys will bring them literally anything. So in Season 1, you had some rooms partying with a tattoo artist and other rooms sitting in an empty void with nothing but a pack of cards and some DoorDash. In Season 2, everyone's in on the joke. Season 1 had a firm time limit of 5 hours to reach a verdict or else everyone was eliminated. This led to mutually assured destruction being regularly invoked.
Hey, bam, we're all gone.
In Season 2, the crew prepared for the game to last all night, so while there is an implicit deadline, it's not hanging over the contestants' heads. They seem to have been encouraged to screw around with the phones and party on Amazon's dime. As a result, the Season 2 cubes go off without much incident. In terms of manipulation, Vance was convinced to agree to a popularity contest, and given that he was the least popular person in the competition, yeah, that was a mistake.
Less than 10% of people voted for Vance.
And Sue was eliminated from a card game because the child genius Jack swapped in a loaded deck. That is the only thing Jack does in the whole show, and Jimmy has milked it to death in the aftermath.
Oh, so you gotta give him a hug?
JC's elimination is just funny because he wants to be a ruthless operator and make Jimmy proud, but just doesn't have it in him. He's paired with Jim and Monica, the maybe possibly married couple with Lego wedding rings. JC and Jim agree to let Monica sit out the elimination because chivalry isn't dead just yet, and so the two guys play a card game. JC loses and, rather than honoring the game, tries to bribe Jim to self-eliminate by offering to give the coin to Monica. And so that is our big cliffhanger for the episode. Will Jim take the bribe? Rather than episode 6 continuing with this exchange, the episode opens outside the cubes and we get the big reveal of who survived, and it's Jim. The decision to shift perspectives is an odd creative choice until you see that, the actual conversation was not the least bit dramatic. Jim refuses the bribe. JC says, oh, well, Monica can have the coin anyway, and that was that. And so that is stretched into a 3-minute sequence. There's a few more minutes of decompression before we get episode 6's challenge, Hearts Will Be Smashed. That's what the wiki calls it. That's the name. We're stuck with it. The goal here is to decisively crown the strongest and smartest contestants in the city through a smart challenge and a strong challenge. These challenges don't eliminate anyone, but the two winners get to decide collectively which 3 contestants to eliminate. This had a curious impact on the game theory at play because players only valued the win if they felt like they were at risk of elimination, but almost everyone was entirely confident that they were safe from getting voted off. Also, no one wants to try too hard to be safe and signal that they feel like they're unsafe. It produces an odd lack of tension given the circumstances. First up, we have the Strong Challenge, which is another spin on Get a Grip. This is the third of what will ultimately be 4 strong challenges involving hanging from a pole, all tailored for a very specific kind of athlete. So, shock horror, the gymnast wins. I will just say, though, Team Beast got really lucky that August didn't collide with the platform during this fall. The Smart Challenge is yet another children's memory game. Contestants need to memorize the path through a grid, a staple of game shows produced for literal children.
In 3, in 2, in 1, and Andrew's away. Runway, slipway, takeaway, and causeway.
That 30-year-old clip from the Australian cult classic children's game show Time Masters is arguably more complex than the one here in Beastmasters. The Time Masters game is timed and the board is just a single element, a path they need to cross to answer a trivia question on the other side, a thing that never happens once in Beast Games Season 2. Have I mentioned that yet? A game show purporting to challenge the smartest minds in the world, and they have absolutely zero trivia. Well, okay, maybe that's a good thing given the tier of trivia they managed to pull out for Season 1.
What is the biggest animal on our planet? Blue whale, Indian rhinoceros, or spiny lumpsucker?
Anyway, this game is another spectacular failure because, again, no one in the room thinks they're at risk of getting eliminated. And so this game that was conceived of as an individual adversarial one where each contestant needs to find their zen and focus through a cacophony of conflicting directions is instead handled collaboratively from beginning to end. Contestants were happy to volunteer to attempt the maze guided by other players who felt safe to guide basically anyone through the maze because they didn't believe the maze runner would eliminate them.
Y'all better help me out though, because I really don't remember anything.
So the entire player pool split up to memorize individual portions of the maze, worked together to get someone through it, and the player crowned the smartest person in the city was Nick the wrestler. Jimmy tries to lampshade this whole thing, but it's another catastrophic failure of a game. This wasn't Nick shocking everyone by winning a quiz. He won because players engaged with the game in a fundamentally different way than was intended. So the last 14 minutes of the episode are spent milling around pondering who will get eliminated. Small Tyler and Briley are the obvious candidates, so after Big Nick eliminates Small Tyler with a sledgehammer, we get our cliffhanger. As we covered in the main video, the third eliminee is veiled in the edit, but the show signals with equal bluntness that Brett will be the third pick.
Alliances are crumbling. I don't know if I can trust you.
I just don't open up. I struggle with that.
I know you told me that you don't open up to people very easily and you don't trust people very easily. It's about having people who, we both fully trust here.
The language of the edit couldn't be more clear. Not only is Monica referencing a conversation we see with Brett, we literally see that visual and Brett's reaction. The language of filmmaking is telling us that this isn't even a real cliffhanger because it's so clearly Brett. And so then episode 7 continues to hide the eliminee for another 90 agonizing seconds, where we finally learn that it is Katie. Before we poke at that, I want to point out that the reveal occurs precisely at the 90-second mark, almost to the frame, by the way. 89 seconds would have felt rushed, but 91 would have been too indulgent. But yeah, Katie. This is an attempted twist, but ends up being simply a rug pull. We had no reason to expect Katie to be eliminated. Katie had no reason to expect Katie to be eliminated. Rather than paying off a narrative beat, this dramatic moment is undercut simply by Monica and Nick needing to explain themselves and justify this decision. They rattle off a list of minor grievances and social fouls that ultimately emerge from Katie wanting to form an all-girls coalition in response to the obvious boys club that was forming. But there you have it. We have our top 10 contestants, and so we can continue with the worst reviewed episode of all of Beast Games. After Katie's elimination, essentially nothing of relevance happens. Each sequence has a practical purpose that makes sense on paper. The existence of the cliffhanger makes sense. The decision to bring the families in for a Last Supper makes sense. Using the cemetery as a highlight reel for the show makes sense. And perhaps even setting up a Buried Alive in advance makes sense. But in practice, it's all just vapor. It's pointless padding. The 30-something military guys have young kids. The young athletes all have parents who are so proud of them. The cemetery scene is even more of a waste of time. It's meant to be a recap of the show's most pivotal moments, a chance to reflect on how far we've come now that 200 players have become 10, but literally half the highlights Jimmy rattles off are from Cubes, which was barely an hour ago. This sequence is meant to remind us how much has happened, but it only serves to highlight how little has actually happened. The whole sequence is another example of pointless excess. Like the cannonball sequence, I'm sure it made for an impressive sight on set, but it does not translate to good television.
210 players entered Beast Games, and 200 have already fallen.
All of this is ultimately just set dressing for the next game, Buried Alive. In this game, players each get a turn taking a cut of $1 million pile of cash. It's billed as a test of greed and integrity. Will everyone take their fair share, or will contestants put themselves first? The order of players is determined via the nomination of a team captain. Essentially, Nick put his hand up, and his team, who call themselves the Ultra Avengers or something, are by this point a strict boys club. The women and Jim weren't cool with the dynamic forming, and so voted against the Mega Avengers. That left Corey and Brett, who are a bit older and don't really fit with the Turbo Avengers, but they are Nick's boys, just not his boys, right? So Brett and Corey ultimately side with the boys, Nick wins, and the order of players that Nick goes with just transparently reflects their loyalty to him. These four are the last four to get dug up. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We have another cliffhanger to endure. After 5 minutes of sitting on the pile of money, wafting on how much to take, we get this sequence heavily implying that Nick takes all of the money.
You have a $1 million opportunity. The only question is,
Yeah.
Episode 8 then totally rug pulls this. Nick doesn't take $1 million, he takes $250,000. So the cliffhanger isn't just a rug pull that feels gross and distracting, it actively works against the show by inverting the expectations. Beast Games has force-fed us clips of Nick proclaiming his integrity and his immunity to bribes. He's so forward about it that, as Brett will point out, it would be hypocritical for Nick to take even $1 over a fair split.
If you took even $1 more, if you took $100,001, you're a villain.
That is how you frame this development. That is the point that you drive. The quantity Nick took is a distant second to the rhetoric he pushed. The need to backtrack makes the segment more garbled and confusing, but more crucially, the show leads us to believe Nick took the entire pot, so when we learn he only took a quarter of the pot, it has a mitigating effect on the betrayal, rather than an emphasizing one. The cliffhanger makes the moment less impactful. So we're off to an awful start, but ultimately episode 8 is probably the best episode that isn't just Survivor. Basically, every Beast Games challenge directs the contestants to behave like children.
I'm falling back towards you, okay? Okay. Because there's smarts in front of us. Yes, I know.
And while this was probably an accident, this challenge has the contestants holding each other to the standards of an adult. And while I stand by our statement that Beast Games doesn't unveil anything about the true nature of Nick and company, I will admit that I am not above passing judgment on the simulacrums put before us for the purpose of entertainment. For example, Nick took a quarter of the pot instead of his 1/10 share. This pissed everyone off and all but guaranteed his immediate exit from the game. So at that point, should he have just taken the whole pot? I don't know. Discuss in the comments. Another example, once people saw that Nick took too much money and the 100k split was out the window, basically every player defaulted to taking an even split of the remaining pot. In doing so, those players took on some burden from stolen money. By contrast, Tyler did what he said he was going to do and took 100,000, an even split in absolute terms, but kicking the Nick problem down the chain for others to inherit. So, is it okay for Tyler to take 100 grand, or should he have paid the Nick tax like August did? I don't know, discuss in the comments. Beyond that, the only notable bits are Brett and Monica. Brett follows Nick's lead and also takes 250k. Notably, it took him several hours to reach this decision. The crew was apparently legitimately furious with him for single-handedly dragging this challenge into the late morning again. Also, for some reason, the cubes are green now. Also, if you think I went too hard on the boys in the main video, here's a taste of Chandler trying to do his job as a co-host.
You have the whole pie in your hands right now. You're about to set the standard whether each pie is going to be equal or different based on what you do right here.
Utterly incompetent. But Monica's bit is, or rather could have been, the most interesting. Monica is left towards the back of the queue and she finds 188,000 to split 4 ways, less than half the fair value. It's at this point that Jimmy rolls out a $500,000 bribe for the coin, but it includes a unique caveat. She could sell the coin in secret. This presents her with the opportunity to make a bunch of money and do a solid for the people behind her in queue without losing the protection of holding the coin. That's how Monica wanted it to go, and that's perhaps how it would have gone if the production hadn't spilled the beans. It seems the whole sell in secret component was an emergent element the production wasn't prepared for, so the cat was out of the bag almost immediately. The boys need to feign ignorance for the camera and pretend that they only suspect that she sold, but they do know for a fact that Monica sold the coin.
So when Monica revealed the 500k, was everyone kind of just like, oh, well, we knew? Like, yeah. Or we had this decision. Okay.
That's exactly how that played out. We already knew.
Anyway, after Jim gets his go with the money, the show gets bored and unceremoniously starts wrapping the game up. Hannah and Katie are dug up simultaneously and their segments are blitzed in a combined 45 seconds. Just the raw disrespect this show has for women who aren't Monica, I swear to God. So after this, we get about 10 full minutes of yap about the fallout of the game, though again, this is the only game that really felt like it could warrant that. If anything, I wanted to hear maybe a bit more of it, or I wanted there to actually be fallout. Like, there's this tantalizing bit where Brett admits that his hope was for Corey to empty the pot and leave nothing for Jim and the women.
I don't regret what I did. I was hoping that you would take the whole thing as well. I really wanted to
give you that opportunity to take that if you wanted to.
And yeah, I did want to see Corey put the screws to Brett for that statement and point out how crappy it is to think that way. Tragically, Corey is too much of an adult and too invested in his alliances to give us a proper crash out, but there's enough there to justify its runtime. All of this is followed by a big announcement from Jimmy where he declares that there's only 2 episodes left.
First, there are only 2 episodes remaining until one of you wins generational wealth.
What? 2?
What?
One of the most consistently funny bits of this show is when the contestants foresee the show's problems in real time. In this case, yeah, August, the pacing of the eliminations is about to get really weird. Anyway, Jimmy declares that they're all leaving the city to do the finale elsewhere, which leads us to the worst segment in the show, the trip to Riyadh.
That is so sick.
Let's get it!
Yo, let's go, Chandler. Go, dude, lock in.
The decision to shoot in Riyadh adds nothing of value to the production. It's like how the opening episode was shot in Las Vegas. I didn't mention that at the time because it's irrelevant. The show isn't set in Vegas, Greenville, Riyadh, or Toronto. It's set in a soundstage. It's just another manifestation of the show's conflict with the optics of the production. Building a set on a construction site in Vegas is more prestigious than building on a construction site in North Carolina. The same goes for shooting in Saudi Arabia. But moving on, we get the setup for the episode 9 game here in episode 8. It's called Telephone Game, even though it has no connection to the actual children's game of telephone, and the literal telephones in this game are superficial elements that get discarded very early on. The game involves several rounds of voting, where players vote on who ought to make it through to the final 6. The catch being that contestants are able to bribe each other with the money earned from Buried Alive. We'll talk more about the game on the other side of the cliffhanger, which once again goes absolutely nowhere. August gets on the phone and attempts to blackmail Monica with his knowledge that she sold the coin.
I have some unfortunate news for you.
Yeah, what is that?
I do know that you sold the coin.
Beast Games has 2 kinds of cliffhangers. Cliffhangers that put forward an entirely fictitious version of events, and cliffhangers that tease a decision or action that is immediately revealed as immaterial. Episode 8's cliffhanger is the latter. It tries to sell August blackmail as a big deal, but once we get into episode 9, nothing comes of it. Neither that specific phone call nor the narrative thread broadly.
And I'm like, dude, what if I use this as blackmail? And looking back, because obviously it doesn't really work.
August never announces it to the group, and we never so much as see a single person upset over the possibility that the coin has been sold. This is the closest we get to a payoff for August's attempted blackmail.
It's a theory, though. I don't know.
If the coin's not here.
That conversation featured August trying to convince Katie to accept a larger bribe from him for her vote, but it's unclear if the whole coin thing influenced Katie at all. The plot thread is simply a bust, the kind of thing an editor would normally excise from the show entirely if they didn't need a cliffhanger. Anyway, the telephone game itself is weird.
This is definitely by far the worst game that we've played so far.
Yeah.
It's designed to be a bidding war. Jimmy wants people spending big to buy each other's votes, and he wants people double-crossing each other and, additionally, being perceived as double-crossing each other. The whole gimmick with the phone and booths is about opening the game up for subterfuge and paranoia. Like, if Tyler paid Nick to vote for him, but Tyler sees Nick on the phone to Hannah, Tyler is supposed to get anxious about whether Nick is going to double-cross him for Hannah. In the end, though, it just makes the process less efficient and difficult to edit. Because a series of rotary telephones are a suboptimal means of complex negotiation within a group, round 1 was an hour long to account for that. Jimmy has this throwaway line that I think captures what he's trying to do. He thinks it's easier to lie over the phone than to lie to someone's face. And I guess that's true, but is that such a compelling observation to warrant building this entire game around it? I don't know. Answers in the comments. Nothing like that ever really happens. The more interesting dynamic is the game theory around the voting. If a player is successfully voted through a round, they're gone from the pool. So that means if you vote for an ally, they're absent from subsequent rounds to vote for you. In essence, it's much easier to get through the early rounds when you have friends you can leverage compared to later rounds when a single vote can determine the outcome. And almost inevitably, someone in an alliance is going to be left holding the bag and the bag. The game kinda plays out that way, but the texture is strange. Part of this is once again a product of the edit. Once again, this episode took all night to film, and so hours completely vanish in the edit, and complex negotiations need to be flattened into singular ideas.
Actually, the rounds were even longer than that. They were like, they started out at like an hour long, and then they kind of broke it down further and farther. So it's kind of like, yeah, it was as you guys know, all these challenges with filming and everything, it takes forever.
Well, and they don't show this, but I think my conversation with Monica was like 20 minutes.
The other major issue is that this process pushes the eliminations to the back end, and so the tension in the early rounds is very abstract. Monica spends almost the whole game trying to buy her way through, but ends up letting herself get pushed to the back of the line. But maybe that's fine, because ultimately there were only 7 contestants truly vying for a spot in the top 6.
We knew going into this too, Nick was not going to spend his money. He's just not.
Nick was never a realistic contender to move on and was happy to cash in and cash out. Jim was maneuvering to get Monica through, and Katie wanted to make a push for the top 6 but quickly found herself drowned out and never ended up making a play.
I just felt really bad for Katie, honestly. It was, and it's kind of portrayed like in the episode and stuff like that, just people saying things that they shouldn't have said, and I felt really bad for her. She was crying. I understood the stress she was under, the pressure. It was unbearable.
The first round featured an hour of negotiation, only for Tyler to get 8 of the 10 votes without bribing anyone. People just agreed to vote for him because they think he's neat.
Do you know who you're voting for?
Would you be cool with me?
I mean, I would be okay with that if everybody's on the same page.
I would vote for you.
Our group of people agreed to vote Tyler.
Hannah and August empty their accounts to get through. Jack is able to leverage the Hyper Avengers to get through with a $30,000 contribution to Jim and Monica's honeymoon to seal the deal. This makes Jack overconfident.
I've been waiting for a game like that where I can use my intelligence to its fullest power.
Corey makes the novel decision to bribe for votes a round in advance. This is a terrible decision because it gives the other contestants last mover advantage. Brett, Jim, Monica, and even Katie will have 30 minutes to talk themselves and everyone else into a different course of action. Corey is betting it all on his peers' ability to remain disciplined in the face of prolonged peer pressure. It's a bad strategy, but because the show is worse than his strategy, several contestants declared that they're firm on voting for Corey this round, and Jimmy just offers to let everyone skip the negotiation phase altogether, which everyone agrees to do.
All right, this round is over, I guess.
Because we were already there for a long time as it was, so everybody was already getting tired and just like, hey, let's go to the next round.
So Corey managed to accidentally turn everyone's last mover advantage into his own no last mover advantage. And look, I'm not going to say that Jimmy ought to have had these guys stand in silence in a circle for 30 minutes in some warehouse in Riyadh at midnight, but I can't think of another serious game show that cedes its rules to the whims of its players in this way. The last round is a two-way duel between Brett and Monica. Brett bribes Jim, Monica's literal pretend game show husband, $30,000 to vote for him instead of Jim's literal maybe game show wife. And Brett is surprised when Jim votes for his probable wife. No amount of money would change that decision, and Brett is made to look like an idiot for even trying. But what's even the point of this game otherwise? Nick ends up taking big money from both Monica and Brett for his vote, promising them both his vote. Throughout this episode, the edit has presented Nick basically as a two-faced liar saying whatever was necessary to get a bag.
Nick, I don't understand. So Monica's paying you $20,000 for a vote this round, and Corey paid you $15,000 for a vote next round.
Yes.
But between us, I thought you were voting for August.
We're going to see what happens.
Monica, in particular, is framed as being consistently strung along by Nick.
Please don't screw me over this time.
I got you. You're good. You're good.
Start making your way to your pods.
You're good.
I'm so sorry.
I know.
Like, I swear, like...
You're good.
Okay.
You're good, thank you. You give me 10 more thousand.
I would. Can I, again, trust you to not change your mind here?
Yes.
Thank you.
Monica's entire strategy ends up hinging on Nick's vote in round 6, the final round, and we see every step of that process in agonizing detail. By contrast, we're shown no substantive conversation between Brett and Nick for the whole episode. Episode 9 cliffhangs on Nick's deciding vote, so the framing is pretty straightforward. Will Nick deliver for Monica, or will he betray her one last time for Brett for some sort of vague, unsatisfying reason like, he's my boy?
the person that I'm locking in, the person I'm voting for is...
Thank you for your vote.
So I'm recording each of these segments in its own audio file. So this is like Beast Video 2, episode 10. And I've already said this a whole bunch of times, but it is insane that we are going into episode 10 with the final 6, that there are going to be 5 eliminations in this one episode. Cracked. Nick casts his vote for Brett because he's Nick's boy. The finale then stops in its tracks to get really, really weird about passing judgment on specific contestants. Both Jim and Nick reneged on their promises, effectively canceling each other out. Jim reneged on a promise involving $30,000, and Nick took $33,000 for a vote he didn't provide. Jim stuck by his wife. Nick stuck by his boy. They are offsetting sins. It would be a waste of time to try and weigh the ethics of these lies. It'd be particularly weird to scold Jim for voting for his own wife simply because Brett was gullible enough to offer Jim money to do otherwise. The show weighs these lies and opts to scold Jim for voting for his own wife.
Brett looks so mad I didn't vote for him. What's he got to be mad about?
He took $30,000 and he didn't vote for you?
Oh, yeah.
The show then absolves Nick by passing the most extreme judgment on Monica for attempting to lie about selling the coin, going so far as to try and peddle a bizarre claim that Monica's failure to make it into the top 6 was a direct consequence of her deception.
Can't trust Nick at the end of the day.
I was honest about the money I made that night. You weren't, and you lost because of it.
Yeah, you told your teammates you took $0 so they could take more money when in reality you took $500. If you told everyone you took $500, you would be here right now.
By this point, it should be clear that the final edit cannot be relied upon to accurately capture what went down on set. So maybe this is true. Maybe people were pissed off at Monica for insisting on maintaining a lie even after the truth had well and truly come out, but that is not the story we were just told. We were just told a story where no one cared about the lie around the coin. We were just told a story where a virtuous, down-on-his-luck wrestler rejected a $1 million bribe, earned the trust of the majority of his peers, only to later surrender to his greed and devolve into a hypocrite. A man who, in the end, demands sweeteners in order to maintain his promises.
Can you give Nick 3 more K? You know what? I'll give Nick 3 more K.
For what?
I don't know. He wants more money.
You give me 10 more thousand?
I would. Can I, again, trust you to not change your mind here?
Yes.
Thank you.
We were just told a story where a woman who, despite all the warning signs, rests her shot at generational wealth on the word of this man and is ultimately betrayed by him for vague and fickle reasons. Look, I don't need to overwork this. Nick is a villain. It's a villainous act. And yeah, it is worse than Jim voting for his maybe game show wife. By trying to make this about the coin, it undercuts the story we were just told in favor of a contradictory version of events. And worse, it essentially turns this moment into an exercise in victim blaming. Yes, Monica was betrayed, but she got what she deserved because she lied too. If Monica's lie about the coin was indeed worse and more harmful, then show it. Don't try to spoon-feed me August bullshit after the fact to try and manufacture a conclusion for the coin out of thin air. Regardless, this gives us our top 6 and the stage is set for the finale. Or, I guess we're 6 minutes into the finale, whatever. We get this kind of high production value animation that is made very annoying by Jimmy's narration declaring Beast Games to be a very legitimate and very illuminating simulation of reality. We then get the reveal of just how big of a warehouse Jimmy hired for the finale. Keep in mind as we go that this entire finale was filmed in one night, so strap in. First up is a game that the wiki refers to as Ball Kick, which, yeah, it's not quite dodgeball because it's less interesting than dodgeball. Players each take position on a platform opposite a heart representing their own life in the game. Players then take turns kicking a soccer ball attempting to break each other's heart until 2 players have been eliminated. Apparently, Beast Games went with soccer balls because Ronaldo was supposed to have a cameo because he's in Saudi Arabia at the moment. Did that influence the production's decision to shoot in Riyadh? I do not care. Do not discuss this in the comments. Anyway, there's an initial foreplay period where, again, players refuse to play the game. After a bit of that, they get a bit bolder and think strategically. Your closest players are your greatest threats, and there's a chance that aiming at the person next to you could result in a whiff that breaks your own heart. So the game settles into a routine of players kicking it vaguely over there in an attempt to be as agreeable as possible, though over there quickly begins to resemble Jack and Hannah's hearts.
So I assume it's me?
Let me try for Jack again.
Let's just aim for Jack.
Jack, it's nothing personal.
I know it's easy for you to say it's not personal, but when everyone's aiming for you, it's not a fun feeling.
Eventually, whether deliberate or accidental, Corey murks Jack. The game then gets super melodramatic for a few beats, and Jack really drives home how blindsided he is by the elimination.
You do so much in this game. You give like a full effort for 41 days, and to lose on someone just kicking a ball right into your heart, it is literally the worst feeling in the world.
And Jack is justified to feel this way. So let's take a detour and drill into Jack's emotions in this instant and see if we can figure out why this moment feels so strange. The top-down structure of Beast Games is very bizarre and causes all sorts of problems. We've hammered very hard on the issues caused by the cliffhangers, but a perhaps equally harmful choice involves the pacing of eliminations. Most game shows have an uncontroversial pace to the eliminations. Ideally, it's something the audience would barely notice. A contestant is eliminated each episode, maybe once a week. Beast Games has a bizarre cadence of eliminations, which is further aggravated by the cliffhangers shifting everything around. So let's go through a timeline of eliminations, listing eliminations based on when they are official, and we see the stupid red cross imposed over the players. Episode 1 features 50 strong and 50 smart players being eliminated, leaving us with a clean 100. Episode 2 features the Choose Your Own Challenge gimmick. We have 9 eliminations in balls, 11 eliminations in balance, 10 eliminations in bluff, for a total of 30 eliminations in Episode 2. Episode 3 features 20 eliminations in big blocks and 25 eliminations in the obstacle course for a total of 45 eliminations, 50% more than Episode 2. Episode 4 features the Survivor crossover, so the only eliminations are the 4 from Captain Bribe, plus one person who had to withdraw due to a family emergency. Episode 5 features 6 eliminations in the Cube game, Episode 6 features 1 elimination from Cubes, and 2 from Hearts Will Be Smashed. Episode 7 begins with one last elimination from Hearts, before we see 0 eliminations for the next 159 minutes of television sans credits. In a production where a 15-hour shoot boils down to 30 minutes of television, those 2 hours and 39 minutes represent like 2 weeks of production. The top 10 cohort spent an absurd amount of time together, and finally cutting the top 10 down to the final 6 involved a huge and elaborate telephone game that took a full night. And here in episode 10, Jack gets his red elimination cross just 9 minutes after those previous 4 eliminees. In reality, this is something like an hour into the next day's shoot. So yeah, Jack would be justified to expect more from the finale, that the show would continue to build big and ceremonious eliminations resulting from complex challenges, and that he wasn't paying 30 grand for the privilege of being bullied at a worse version of dodgeball. After all, 9 of the top 10 contestants are eliminated in the finale, an insane decision. And so, this is the way the finale is going to go. It's time to wrap this crap up. The show will screech to a halt to press F to pay respects to the eliminees, but they're universally anticlimactic because there's simply so much still to cram into the episode. Jack was right to feel blindsided by his elimination and feel bitter in the moment about this whole thing. But at the same time, how did he think this was going to go? How did he think his Beast Games journey was going to end? By this point in the game, it's clear that smart players offer no unique benefits in themselves. Team Beast are not, in the literal 11th hour of filming, suddenly going to ask the contestants to do math. Jack's primary utility to the Giga Avengers was simply that he was a non-threatening ally that helped them attain majority voting power. And ultimately, he was a free elimination that could be cashed in at the right time, and top 6 was the right time. So farewell, Jack. Now, let's play a quick game. If you had to guess which of these 5 people was about to get bullied by the remaining 4, who would you pick? That's right. Actually, that's a little unfair.
Hannah.
Unless I want to create enemies with the 3 that are aiming for you right now, I have to join forces.
Despite saying that and really thinking about it, Corey does not in fact go for Hannah. But that clip is indicative of the rhetoric in the room, and it makes for a really uncomfortable watch. It's not even malicious, and that lack of malice kind of makes it worse. It's so self-evident that Hannah is the correct option to target, such that Corey's decision not to is an act of mercy.
It's just the smartest play for myself. Kick for Hannah. We're all kicking for Hannah.
And so Hannah, like a woman, starts crying to make it weird.
It is a sucky feeling to have the entire cast gang up against you.
This might actually be the weirdest moment of the show. I'll explain what we're shown and told, but understand that this is almost certainly not reality. Tyler is aiming to go for Hannah. She breaks down crying, and Tyler hesitates. August then begins chirping to Tyler nonstop about how he simply has to go for Hannah, and then this happens.
Oh my God.
So Tyler breaks August's heart from a kick that we only get shown for a few frames.
I truly felt bad. You know, all of us were targeting Hannah, and then after seeing her tear up, man, that's what I made my mind. And I just told myself I couldn't keep doing this to her. My young boys at home, you know, that will watch this, you know, I want to be a good role model for them.
Dang.
And, you know, I want them to stick up for the underdog, the little person, you know, the person in need, so.
That is the version put forward by the show. Tyler regretfully eliminated August to put an end to the harassment. Tyler murked his best friend to protect a woman in need. What a guy. This is fiction. August is adamant that the edit misrepresented the situation and his and Hannah's relationship.
I think in the edit, it makes it seem like I really hate Hannah or she really hates me, but there's no animosity against each other. There was no hate for Hannah, and Hannah and I are totally good. Hannah's awesome.
As August tells it, Tyler was playing the game as Jimmy intended. Tyler and August had been close the entire show, but Tyler saw August as a threat. Tyler deliberately eliminated August for that reason. So when August is yelling "go for Hannah," it is not misogynistic bloodlust, but rather August pleading for his own life. That would track given that Hannah had just made the "I'm a small bean, you should want to face me later" argument to Corey. So who should we believe? August, who was kind of wound up and annoying on TV but otherwise seems like a normal dude? Or the production team that brought us the amazing disappearing push-up contest? Answers in the comments. So we have our final 4, and it's time for the penultimate Beast Games challenge. The ultimate strong versus smart. The merging of brains and bronze into one it's just stacking blocks again.
Do you all recognize these?
Yes.
It's a combination of the pole hanging challenge from episode 6 with the block stacking from episode 1, but somehow even worse than that makes it sound. Players hang from the poles opposite a stack of 16 colored blocks. You can then press a button that will raise all the platforms up and drop the blocks. You must then attempt to recreate the stack. If you're successful, you get to nominate a person to eliminate. If you get it wrong, you're eliminated. So, just to start, the game theory of this challenge is ridiculous. The raw statistical odds of succeeding at the 16 block stack are incredibly low, lower than your 2 in 3 chance of not being selected for elimination. So, even if you are Hannah and know for a fact that you're likely to be eliminated next, you're better off doing nothing and betting on the contestants failing to match the pattern. And if you're Tyler, beloved by all, you have every reason to just hold on to that pole and let the other contestants sort it out. Or at least that's how it would have gone if the players didn't break the game yet again.
The edit's kind of a little bit different than how it actually played out. All right, so the thing was, me, Brett, and also Tyler, you know, we kind of had already a strategy made up. Hey, Brett was going to count the first 6 blocks. I was going to count the next 6 blocks. And then Tyler was going to count the last 4 blocks. And what you guys don't see is actually Tyler was the one who stacked the last 4 blocks on there. So it was actually like a 3-way alliance that was working together.
So yeah, no caveats this time, no mitigating factors. It was a 3-way conspiracy against Hannah. It's hashtag bags for the boys. This represents one last individualistic smart challenge that was bypassed collaboratively, and there's something almost poetic about this being how the last smart contestant goes, a perfect distillation of the smart experience on this show. The producers are too cowardly to admit to this happening, by the way, and so the version we see on the show is an incoherent fantasy. We're shown Brett pushing the button with no preamble. He gets about halfway through and looks cooked before Corey forlornly begins to give Brett the solution, and it's implied that Brett is led by Corey all the way to the end of the sequence. The scene suggests that Brett attempted the puzzle with no confidence in his recollection, essentially committing Beast Game suicide before Corey saved Brett from himself at Hannah's expense. Oh, right. Brett chooses to eliminate Hannah, by the way. Now that the season is all said and done and the cast have made their podcast appearances, it's so aggravating that Team Beast insisted to our faces that they don't manipulate events in the edit. Not only is that so clearly untrue, they don't even manipulate events for the right reasons. They excise whole elements of the production because they're embarrassing and discrediting to the creatives. Case in point, the final bribe. 3 players must become 2, so there is a final bribe for a player to self-eliminate. The set is designed to try and evoke mystery and subterfuge with covered buttons, whatever. But the 3 just negotiated who would take it. It was agreed that Brett would be the one to take the bribe basically before the game even started.
The edit doesn't show us really talking or anything like that because obviously they want the drama for the TV. But in real life, we're just sitting there talking and hey, who's going to take it? Who's not going to take it? Who wants to move forward? Who doesn't want to move forward?
They chatted through the whole thing and did the prisoner's dilemma thing where they simply wanted to see how high the counter would go until Jimmy told them it wasn't going any higher. So even here, we have adversarial games being resolved collaboratively. And again, we're shown none of this in the edit, which constructs a simulacrum of tension through everyone's bored expressions and banal remarks. But MMA fighter Brett is now a millionaire, and that leaves our finalists as Air Force pilot Tyler and Navy vet Corey. Which leads us to the final briefcase challenge. This game was famously a bit of a schmozzle in Season 1. It's meant to be analogous to poker, adversarial deal or no deal. One contestant will place the $5 million check in one of these briefcases, and the other contestant will have to guess which case contains the check to win it all. After a failed guess, a briefcase is eliminated to increase the odds of finding the check. This is supposed to be the ultimate Beast game. Jimmy and his boys imagined this playing like a master's game of poker, with players lying, double bluffing, searching for tells, and all that. In Season 1, Jeff found the check on the first attempt by random chance. Here, we see return to the mean, and the game goes on far longer than is ideal. Neither Corey or Tyler are master poker players, both hate lying, both are fatigued from shooting Beast games all night long. And so both are scared of giving away tells and lean on their military stone faces to get through and end up repeating phrases at each other like lunatics.
Open it and find out.
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 I really don't get this show's obsession with shooting at night. Like, there's so many scenarios where they shoot at night for no reason. Set up in a soundstage and shoot during normal hours, you goblins. But Corey, in one last act of disobedience, realizes that the odds are in his favor, and it's actually not in his interest to know what case the check is in, because he'll have a tell. So Corey just closes his eyes and chooses a case randomly. It's like that one episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where Yugi outwits Pegasus's mind-reading ability by swapping between personas and blindly playing each other's cards.
You're wrong, Pegasus. Huh? Remember, I still have one more card out. The card that took the last bit of Yugi's courage to play. And now it's time to find out what it is!
I didn't need to play that clip, but at this point it's just nice to have a moment's respite from Beast games. Upon seeing this, Tyler then pretends to start closing his eyes as well, but in perhaps Beast Game's biggest twist, Tyler doesn't actually pick randomly. An act of deception that accomplishes nothing. Corey takes him at his word and asks no further questions, so it devolves into yet another game where players discard the game Jimmy made up in favor of simply rolling a dice. Like, seriously, if I were a game designer on Beast Games, I would be offended that most people opt to solve my games by playing other pre-existing games instead. But maybe that's better for all of us. The game is bad, and it takes 8 rounds for Tyler to eventually win. They then insist on stoically dropping Corey into the foam pit. Tyler flexes on the pile of fake money, and then the show wraps up by spending its final 2 minutes doing inspiration porn of the contestants' families and slapping itself on the back for how much money it gave away.
But no one is walking away empty-handed. Multiple people literally became millionaires.
Getting on the show is a miracle.
So, what did we learn today? Nothing.